Hello there, you're watching Special Dialogue here on TVR World. I'm Rahmat Idris. With the world reeling in such a gripping impact of climate change and 2023 being dubbed as the hottest year yet for our planet, well, countries around the world are racing towards decarbonizations. And in that sense, Norway has always become such a beacon of light in terms of coming up with technologies, initiatives, and inspirations to address these matters. And we are here at the Embassy of Norway in Jakarta, Indonesia, where we are extremely honored to be sitting down in conversation with the ambassador of Norway to Indonesia, Her Excellency Kruger Giverin, to sort of give us her latest insights and takes on how to push forwards and foster cooperations between Norway and Indonesia. Madam Ambassador, always such a pleasure to welcome you to our program, and thank you very much for making the time and squeezing us into your busy schedule. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me again. It's
a
pleasure.
It is ours, trust me when I say that. And last time we spoke, it was about the cooperations. We've had Norwegian waffles, but this time, Madam Ambassador, we'd like to go on specific topics on something that Norway has excelled throughout the times, and that is the renewable energy, because we know that Norway has made renewable energy a national identity, with renewable energy sources making up to 98% of energy use in Norway. Can you please shed a light on such significant strides that Norway has made in this particular sector, Madam Ambassador?
Well, I think, first of all, it is, well, thank you for your very kind introduction. I think it is very important in the Norwegian context to remember two things. One is that we are a very small country with only 5 million people, a bit more, but also that we have been very fortunate with our geography and the natural resources that we have at our disposition in Norway. So since the early industrial development times, Norway has built up a very large hydropower sector, which means that we are, as you said, very much very lucky to have access to hydropower as the main source of our primary energy use in Norway. On the other hand, Norway is also a major oil and gas exporter. So even though we can rely on renewables for our own consumption, we still have a challenge in today's world where climate change is becoming such an important global challenge to move our well, to change our oil and gas sector, to transform it into renewable energy, with a major focus, for example, on wind power out in the ocean. So if you compare it with Indonesia, just to make that link back, I think it is important to see that such a large country that Indonesia is, with different natural resources, also many different natural resources, that kind of energy transformation will always be of a slightly different character than what we have been doing in Norway.
Right. Madam Ambassador, you mentioned challenges because we believe transformation is not something that you can do as easy as turning back the palm of your hands, and that takes time, that takes a change of minds, and not one particular sector, not only the government, but everyone in the country. Can you elaborate, please, on these so-called challenges that Norway had to go through in order to transform the use of energy from fossil fuels, fossil-based energies, to sustainable and renewable energy?
I think for Norway's, when it comes to Norway's consumption of fossil fuels, we have the same challenges as other countries, like Indonesia and other countries around the world. There are a lot of emissions coming from, for example, our transport sector, but also from building sites, from industry, etc. So just to say a few words about transport, for example, because that is very, that is here in Jakarta a key challenge, and also in other places resources in Indonesia and in Norway. And we've had a very strong policy, actually for quite a few years, on moving our cars from being based on fossil fuels, petrol, diesel, onto electric vehicles. So I think, you know, and as I said before, given that our electricity production is very much coming from hydropower, this in our case of course means that the transport sector will have fewer emissions than what they did 10 or 20 years ago. So I think the electric vehicle transformation or the policies that we've had is perhaps a good example to follow also from other countries.
So when you mentioned 10, 20 years ago, and we just started now in Indonesia, so we can only hope 10, 20 years from now our country will be able to follow suit in that sense. Madam Ambassador, just to echo on what you just said on hydropower, it has been acknowledged that Norway is, a matter of fact, the 7th largest hydropower producing energy in the world. And that is immense. As you mentioned, you are only populated by a little over 5 million people. And here we are in Indonesia. We are an archipelagic country. We comprise of thousands of islands, a lot of water sources, and also wind sources. How would we learn from what Norway has gone through in terms of making the most of your natural resources? In that sense, is the hydropower to power the country?
Well, I think, first of all, what I have to say is that we are very lucky that we have Norwegian companies here in Indonesia, such as Tinfos, for example, who was also visited by your Minister of Energy last year in Norway during the energy dialogue we had there. So Tinfos has a lot of experience on hydropower. And is a very old company, has a lot of technological insights that we are very happy to share, and they are also working with Indonesia to build hydropower installations here in Indonesia. However, in order to produce hydropower, what you need is quite large rivers that are sort of moving.
And in constant stream as well.
In constant stream. So here in Indonesia, and I am not at all an energy expert myself, but I believe that if you look at Java, for example, as an island where you have the major industries, from what I hear from people who know this better than I do, hydropower is not going to be able to power
enough energy.
Because in Java, unfortunately, there are not enough large rivers, you know, so you have to look at
strong enough current, if we may say.
Exactly. So Indonesia is a very diverse country. I know that Tinfos, for example, is working mainly in Sulawesi and Sumatra, and also on perhaps smaller installations than what you would need to power, for example, a large factory. So you are looking at developing solar power here. There is a great potential for geothermal power, etc. So you need to look at the whole range of options also for Indonesia. You need to look at the different topography, geography of Indonesia's vast territory. So I think the energy transition in Indonesia, in any case, will be quite different from what we've seen in Norway, even though we have a lot of expertise that we are happy to share.
It has to adjust to geographical challenges to a certain country. And from your conversations, Madam Ambassador, with our experts and analysts on behalf of the Norwegian government, what sort of takes that have you received from these experts in terms of harnessing the most from our energy sources, sustainable ones at that regard? You mentioned a little bit about the solar power, the geothermal energy. We also have wind potential. Would that be at all possible for our country to transform, learning from all the strides that Norway has made?
Well, I think the analysis of Indonesia's energy sector is best done by Indonesian experts. I mean, you have a very, very competent Ministry of Energy. You have so many experts here. So I think the analysis of the challenges and the opportunities in Indonesia's energy sector and the development of renewable energy here will be done by your own government. So I just want to say from Norway's side, we are very, very happy to share our experiences, and fortunately we also have commercial actors that are interested in Indonesia as a market and in contributing both to commercially good solutions, but also of course with the transfer of technology that comes with that.
We'll be right back with special dialogue here on TVR World. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Special Dialogue here on TVR World. I'm Rahmat Idris. We're here at the Embassy of Norway in Jakarta, Indonesia, in conversations with Madam Ambassador of Norway to Indonesia, Her Excellency Ruth Kruger Giverin. Madam Ambassador, just last week, you had a first-hand account, you visited yourself, a newly inaugurated waste management facility in East Java province in the city of Banyuwangi. How did this come about? Because we've heard that we received full support from the Norwegian government.
Well, that is correct. We have had a number of projects which have been implemented in Banyuwangi, specifically in Banyuwangi district, since quite a few years ago. And it's a very comprehensive initiative. It's about building the knowledge and the interest from local communities to actually separate their waste so that it can be taken, transported to a waste management facility and then processed into other projects. So what we're trying to do together with the government or the Bupati and the Kabupaten of Banyuwangi is to create a truly circular economy where waste is no longer just waste, but waste is feedstock into a process that can create new products. And this is very, very, very interesting. And the partners we have in Banyuwangi and the local community there has been very good at deploying different kind of technologies. You know, there are certain technologies you can use on organic waste. Then you have other kind of processing for plastic, for example.
Which is always a sore thumb there, the plastic problem.
Exactly. So all these initiatives for us is part of our work here in Indonesia on marine litter and plastic waste, and in particular all the plastic that goes into the sea. So, you know, here in Indonesia, we would love to see the seas free of plastic. And this is our small contribution, Banyuwangi being close to Bali. And as we know, all kinds of plastic that goes into the ocean, unfortunately, travels around and creates, you know, litter on your beautiful beaches and all kinds of problems for the ecosystem in the sea.
Can you tell us more about this waste management facility, Madam Ambassador? Because we believe it truly goes in line with the principle of reuse, reduce, and recycle, and that comes in such technologically advanced facility, if we may say. So how does it work? How does it transform all of these waste from the local people and minimize waste leakage into our ocean?
Well, first of all, I have to say this is part of the city of Banyuwangi's own plan. So this is not our plan that we are...
We believe it's Banyuwangi Green or something.
Banyuwangi Hijau. And the commitment and the engagement from the local community and from the Kabupaten and the Bupati herself is absolutely crucial to this initiative. So this is just a way of supporting Banyuwangi's own initiative. Now, if you were there, you would see it's a very simple system where people are sorting waste into yellow and green containers. So, you know, organic waste and non-organic waste, and then it's taken to a big waste management plant and it's processed in different ways. And I mean, the objective of this is that there is no additional waste that everything is being processed in the best possible way, so that it exactly does not end up in our oceans.
Because we've heard reports that the facility can manage at least 80 tons of waste in one day, and that is remarkable, for lack of a better word, Madam Ambassador, and truly sets a precedent for other cities who are suffering from such problems, who are in dire needs of such facilities. How do you think our pilot project, we know that it was initiated by the Banyuwangi government, but then with the full support also from the Norwegian government, how do you think this particularly inspiring project will also make its way to other regions in our country?
Well, I have had a number of conversations with ministers here in Indonesia, I mean at the national level, and I've always tried to explain, and I think the government also knows about the really important initiative which is going on in Banyuwangi, but also I must say in other parts of Indonesia, because there are other similar initiatives that I'm not aware of, but I know they exist. So I think the challenge here is to make sure that we have a system that fully works, which is sustainable, as in, you know, with a bit of time can function by itself. So without the need of countries like Norway coming in to provide financial support, but it actually is working by itself. Through, for example, waste resulting in products that can be sold on the market. So that's really what you want to see. And I think for Indonesia, this is extremely important and very, very relevant, because if you have a place like Banyuwangi where you make this actually work and you know what it takes and what's necessary to make the system function, then of course you can replicate this in other parts of Indonesia. And Norway is very keen on supporting, you know, whether it's a seminar or dissemination of this kind of knowledge.
Right, which brings me to my next question to you, Madam Ambassador. Would Norwegian government be open to further cooperations to foster more support for other regions of Indonesia to follow suit in the track of Banyuwangi? In a sense, to reduce, reuse, and recycle their waste?
We are very interested in talking about this with whoever is interested in talking to us about it.
A lot of our regions.
But I don't think Norway can go in and fund waste management systems all over
like everywhere
Indonesia.
in our country, our vast nation. That's right.
I think what is really important now is to try and support, like we do in Banyuwangi, to make sure the system can work by itself through commercial and private investments, and then try and replicate this in other parts of Indonesia.
Right. On that note, Madam Ambassador, one of the more intricate problems that we have here in our country is to alter the mindset of our people, the way they think, the way they treat their waste. As you say, it will take participations of our society to take part in segregating, if I may say, their waste, all the color-coded type of waste that you mentioned. How do we come about in terms of addressing the challenges of changing the way we think, we treat our garbage here in our country? Because that's not the case, we believe, in Norway, where everyone is highly educated and motivated enough to do so.
Well, I must say, I think in Indonesia there is just so much spirit of innovation and creating new and creative solutions to problems. I mean, I very much believe in, especially the younger generation here in Indonesia, coming up with these solutions. It is complicated, but I think you're absolutely right. It requires a change of mindset, and unfortunately, even here in Jakarta these days, you can see people burning their waste next to their houses, which just creates even more pollution than we already have. You know, waste needs to be treated. It doesn't disappear. So I think for a country like Indonesia, with so many people and so many beautiful natural areas, I was a few months ago, I was visiting Rinjani in Lombok, and it's such a fantastic place. Yeah, but unfortunately, a lot of waste and litter around. So I think Indonesians themselves know that there has to be a solution to these problems. And right. I mean, we are very happy to support.
Well, it is a humongous homework, but what we can do is take one step at a time.
Yeah.
And as you say, keeping our plastic away from our oceans, and you're a diver yourself,
Yes.
I believe you've witnessed how beautiful our oceans are and would like to keep it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And would like to get more on the cultural side of your insights of our Indonesians' richness here in Indonesia, particularly in Banyuwangi, where you also witnessed the festival there. But we'll talk about that more when we return in just a few minutes right here on the special dialogue on TV Our World. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to our special dialogue here with the Ambassador of Norway to Indonesia. Madam Ambassador, also to piggyback on your experience just a little over a week ago in Banyuwangi, East Java province, you also took your time to be a part and witness a very esteemed festival to the local people called Gandrung Sewu Festival. So, share with us your thoughts, please, having witnessed and be a part of such a festivity.
Well, it was such a privilege to be invited and to be there together with the Bupati, with the minister, and also with the governor of East Java, who was there, and also many other dignitaries. It's a big festival. I think it goes on for several days, but I was there for this major performance of this. It was like a dance performance, which took place on the beach. So the Pantai Boom in Banyuwangi.
Gorgeous.
And it was just, it was a bit difficult to follow. They had produced a booklet which explained a bit of the story, but as you know, these performances always have components of good and evil, of spirituality, and it was basically just a fantastic performance. Based on the culture of Indonesia, you know, like I assume it's the culture of East Java or Banyuwangi, where, and the really amazing thing about it was the number of dancers, because I think there must have been more than 1,000 people at some point.
Yes, and around 1,300 dancers and musicians taking part, which was on a colossal level of its own, and we were very honored to have you in the crowd. And just to add to what you've said, it is indeed a representation of distinctive culture of the Eastern Javanese people, particularly that opening performance, Madam Ambassador, was the embodiment of cooperation. As we know, art transcends boundaries, and also in a way, appreciating our cooperations of Indonesia and Norway. Can you find some semblance of similarities between Indonesia and Norway in terms of arts and culture, Madam Ambassador?
Well, I think Indonesia, for me anyway, stands out when it comes to these kinds of spectacular dance performances. We don't have anything like that in Norway. We have some traditional dance, but it's not performed usually in these kinds of contexts. So I don't really see a very close connection between the dance performance at the Gandrung Sewu and Norwegian dance performances. But I think in terms
of comparing 5 million to 275 million alone is another thing to talk about. What do they represent, the colors and the patterns, Madam Ambassador? Because here in Indonesia, we have traditional attires which represent certain philosophy, either good versus evil, or ways to invite people to come together to face whatever calamities that may be in their way. But in that sense, in Norway, do you have certain philosophies or meanings at all to your traditional attires? Or
No,
Does it
we
represent
don't.
something?
We don't. I think I mean the bunad is traditional Norwegian wear from several hundred years ago.
Right.
It's been it used to be like the clothes that people normally wore, and of course there would be different patterns. There would be embroidery of flowers, for example, on some of these patterns. But I am not aware that they have any specific meanings like special clothes here in Indonesia.
But we believe that be something beautiful to wear and something warming to wear in the winter. You say it was quite hard to put on. On another note now, Madam Ambassador, a couple of years ago, we've enjoyed 70 years of bilateral relations between Indonesia and Norway. And we're only at the age of 77 years old, our country, meaning that at such a young age, we have established and nurtured the relations between Indonesia and Norway. In the time coming, alongside your tenure of ambassadorship here in Indonesia, how do you see these relations move forward?
I think the Norway-Indonesia relationship is stronger than it's ever been. We have, for being such a small country, I think Norway stands out in how substantial our cooperation is in key areas of interest for both nations, such as climate, forest, oceans, human rights. We have a privileged human rights dialogue with Indonesia. So I'm really proud of the partnership we have. We had Minister Retno Marsudi in Norway in June, and I think we both concluded that both our two ministers concluded that this partnership is rock solid, is very strong and very substantial. I think what we both feel is that it's based on mutual respect and understanding also of the fact that we are two different countries with different challenges. And like we talked about earlier about the energy transition, for example, for Norway, it is very important to also understand the challenges that Indonesia is facing and not just be kind of finger pointing and telling you what you have to do, but to try and
go along for the ride to transformation.
Try and engage in key areas where we have something to offer that Indonesia can learn from, and to work together to face the global challenges that we are facing these days. Right. Because there are many, and with this geopolitical instability we see both in Europe but also in this region in Asia, I think Indonesia has a key role to play. We both are very important defenders of international law, on the UN Charter, on territorial sovereignty of nations. So the partnership with Indonesia and the cooperation we have is absolutely fundamental to us.
Right. And one of the biggest homeworks on the table for us, I mean, you mentioned the geopolitical tensions back during our presidency of the G20 and also here in the region with Myanmar issue during the chairmanship of ASEAN. But more than that, Madam Ambassador, in the time coming, the biggest climate change conference will take place in United Arab Emirates very, very soon, which is something that has always taken major highlights and headlines around the globe. And one of the most notable issue pertaining that particular climate change conference is about the disparity of advancement and progress in terms of addressing the decarbonizations around the globe, particularly the disparity between advanced nations, developed economies, and developing economies like ours. So how do you think the gap of financing can be addressed? As you mentioned briefly there, modern and advanced nations should not just be pointing fingers to developing nations. We've had a fair share of major challenges. How do you think we can close this gap in terms of supporting one another for the same common goal for the Earth?
I think that's a very important and very big question, and I'm not in a position to give a very general answer. What I can say is that we are very proud of our partnership with Indonesia on climate and forests. You're talking about the financing gap and the commitment from developed countries is not being fulfilled, and this is a major issue. I think here in Indonesia, I feel proud to say that we are working as partners of Indonesia. We're not finger pointing, but our relationship in terms, for example, of climate, the climate and forest partnership we have is based on us providing, paying Indonesia for the results the very impressive results that your government has achieved on reducing emissions from deforestation. So it's a results-based payment system where we are not just telling Indonesia what to do, but we are basically recognizing Indonesia's very important achievements. So I think that is a kind of financing model that we are very happy to talk about at the COP, and I hope we will have the opportunity to do so.
All right, so this conversation has been illuminating, Madam Ambassador. We know that the net zero emission is such an elusive thing, but at least, as you said, reduced emission is something that we can be proud at the moment, but more work ahead of us just to achieve that goal. We'd like to express our gratitude once again. Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador of Norway to Indonesia, Your Excellency Ruth Kruger Giverin, for your insights and your time for TVA World.
Thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure.
And that was a special dialogue here at the Embassy of Norway in Jakarta, Indonesia, which hopefully sheds a light on such harmonious relations between Indonesia and Norway, and more things to look forward in the future. Finally, I'm Rahmat Idris. We thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.